Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson and this week I'm joined by just Scott. Unfortunately, Joris has some personal reasons as to why he won't be here tonight. We wish him all the best and hopefully he will be back next week. But Scott, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. How are you, Ben?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I have to say I didn't see many goals this weekend. I seem to get all the 0-0s, but we'll quickly run through the results now. There were definitely goals on Friday. We saw Beerschot lose 3-2 at home to Charleroi. Union, without Undav and Vanzir, they could only draw 0-0 with Eupen. Mechelen and the Circle of Bruges played a bit of a crazy one. That was a 2-2 draw with a couple of red cards. Unfortunately, I was watching Oostend against St. Truden while that one was on, and that finished 0-0. Then Leuven Anderlecht, that one finished 0-0 as well. Big one on Sunday, Club Brugge absolutely hammered Antwerp 4-1. Genk beat Kortrijk 2-0. Standard lost again. They lost to Ghent 1-0. And Zulte Waragem won the big battle of the bottom dwellers. They won that against Seraing 1-0. So Scott, let's start with that Beerschot Charleroi game then. Charleroi taking the lead in about the 19th minute. Basically two passes out from the back led to Bayo scoring the first goal. Kayembe into the midfield. I think he found Hermans. Hermans slipped it through to Bayo and poor old Halima just didn't have the pace or the strength to keep up with the big man. A really, really nice finish from him. And you can just tell he's got that little bit of confidence from the move that he made from Ghent to Charleroi in the winter, just to get some more regular minutes, and he's starting to look like a much better player. Speaking of emerging talents, I guess you could say, Ilyas Sabari has been kind of the only real bright spark from Beerschot's season so far, and only that's been really over the past couple of week matches and stuff like that. 24th minute, a bit of a ping ball in the area lands at his feet, and fantastic finish from him into the far right-hand corner. At that point, Beerschot they're not playing badly. They were well in the game, and straight after into the second half, they take the lead. Joran Dom from a Shankland cross just absolutely outpaces everyone to make him the joint top scorer for Beerschot with 4 goals, which, I mean, I think that just sums up their issues, that a man that's played central midfield or right back for most of the season is in the joint top scorers. And yeah, Beerschot looked like they won for an unlikely 3 points. However, the same odd issues came to bite them again. 72nd minute, Kayembe with a lovely cross, quite dangerous, and Stipe Radic unluckily kind of turns it into his own net. 6 minutes later, poor defending from Beerschot. Looked like there may have been a foul on Koulibaly, which was actually, on that note, good to see Koulibaly back. It's been a long time. He came on, looked like might have been a foul on him, but referee decided to play on. Ball kind of works around the penalty area from Charleroi. Zorgan's involved in that and then just makes a fantastic darting run into the box. No one tracks him. He slots it home in the 78th minute. And that was that. Charleroi came back from 2-1 down there to win. And, I mean, we're looking at the start of this weekend was the start of kind of like the Belgian classics. And speaking kind of like a cycling analogy, Beerschot feel like that side that, or kind of that rider in the Tour de France who's so far off the pace that the bus kind of sweeps them up at the end. They never really get to even finish the race because they're so far behind. And I think that's kind of where Beerschot are at the moment. They're so far behind that they had to win that game and they didn't. And I think they've completely run out of chances, haven't they, Scott?
Yeah, I think it's gone. I think we've probably been quite generous actually over the last month or so, where we thought, well, maybe, just maybe, there's a chink of light. When I think in our heart of hearts, we know it's been done for a while. It's funny. I mean, they've had some results where you think, oh, hello, you know what I mean? They could spring a wee surprise result here, and you think, is this potentially the start of something? But it's the same issues kind of cropping up. And that there's a slight lack of consistency to their squad selection as well, which is just disruptive to their preparation, I think, which just doesn't do anything to help them. And I think there has been an acceptance for a little while inside the club, really, that, you know, it's kind of done. Maybe a disagreement longer term about how they handle that, obviously, but it's not all bad news. I suppose they do have, as we know, the new training complex which will be built. So longer term, there are plans there that are very, very positive. But yeah, it was another really disappointing weekend for them. Although they weren't awful. I mean, I think they have in recent weeks they have improved slightly, but you know, I think that's come at a time where I think they accept their fate, and I don't think that's a coincidence that the performances have started to improve. Perhaps once the pressure's been lifted, I don't expect them to kind of come out publicly and admit that, obviously. But that was my feeling about some of the recent performances over the last month as to why they have been a little bit better, and they've certainly been scoring a little bit more. Unfortunately, they keep conceding. It's the old defensive issues that they've just not been able to get a grip of all season. It's just been a disaster for them. Charleroi, on the other hand, again, another really effective performance from them. Bio's starting to kind of, as you say, sharpen up. He's starting to find his feet in that side now, and I think he's probably beginning to enjoy being the main man for the moment. That was his second goal, so he's laying an early claim to obviously being the main striker at the club. I'm still waiting for him to perform a really effective striking partnership with Yusuf Badji, so we'll see how that goes. Adam Zorgan as well, what a great goal that was. I mean, his desire to get at the end of that and get that done was just a really good goal, and great goal to win a game, I think, as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, Zorgan's just been so impressive this season as well. And when you look at kind of the table and like kind of the positions in the playoff two for Charleroi, that was actually quite a big win. They had 2 losses on the bounce, and the gap was starting to close between the 9th place and the 8th place in those positions. And with Genk starting to improve as well, like, Charleroi needed to get back into winning ways. I think the way their season's kind of panned out, they do deserve to stay in the playoff too. I think Joris mentioned it, we've mentioned it as well, and kind of like they're very good at beating the teams that are weaker than them. It's the teams above them in kind of the top 4 that they do struggle against. But if they're beating all the teams outside of the top 4, then they're a playoff 2 team. Like, that's what they deserve. Yeah, absolutely right. And Beerschot defensively, that's 60 goals conceded now this season. 61's the record. That's Zulte Waragem. We're not really surprised about that at the moment, but Beerschot have played 1 game less. They have Standard coming up, which is basically over for them, but they could inflict some misery on Standard, who, yeah, having a miserable time themselves, who we'll definitely get to in a bit. Let's move on to the first game on Saturday. And yeah, as I mentioned in kind of like the preview for and kind of like the roundup, no Vanze or Undav for Union, and I think they definitely missed them. Again, it was just kind of couldn't quite take the chances they were creating. Like, they definitely felt like they had the better of this game. 13 shots overall, but only 3 on target. Erpen, on the other hand, just 2 shots. Probably the highlight for them from this game were the fans that were doing the conga line before the game and all came in fancy dress. Like, absolutely love that. I mean, if you're going to come away, they probably came thinking they were coming for a hiding, and they didn't. Their team stood up and accounted for. The back 3 put in a great performance, especially Agbadu, Jordi Amat, and the lot. Yeah, I guess Scott, it was we knew. I don't know. I felt like this was a sort of game that if you're going to miss Vanze and Undav, like, you want to be playing a team near the bottom like this, where at the end of the day, it's not the worst thing that could happen, because they knew that the teams below them were going to be playing each other in Club Brugge and Antwerp. But it just highlights how, despite how good the squad is and how complementary the squad is, it is built with those 2 in mind as kind of the finishers.
Yeah, I thought Union actually played pretty well. What was missing was just that clinical edge that we know that those 2 bring, and although they created opportunities, the opportunities weren't quite as clear cut as the ones they often create when Vanzier and Undav are playing. They didn't quite cut open in the way that they've been doing other sides, and not getting in behind in the same way either. Every other aspect of their game, that getting the ball up the top kind of quickly, was very much in evidence. And Matoma actually was trying to do something that had not been doing a lot of. He was trying to thread a lot of balls through channels, which I thought was kind of a good way of mixing it up, actually. Mian was working quite hard, and I actually thought had a decent game. I thought the early signs of him having a run in the side are actually quite positive based on that contribution, I thought. He looked like he was up for it as well, which is good, because obviously he's going to get a little run now. Union disappointed, I think, with that result. I think they saw an opportunity, or at least Mazu saw an opportunity to open a gap up again. I think he obviously thought with Club and Antwerp playing that there was a chance that they could get the win and that points might be dropped at the Jan Bridal, which would fall in Union's favour. But they've had so much going their way this season that this was a weekend where it was a bit of a mixed bag for them, to be honest. That was a really hard 1 point for Eupen in the end. They struggled in most of this game, actually, to even get out of their half, and kind of were trying to hit Union in the break to a certain extent and weren't having much joy. Union were really aggressively hunting them down with a press which was pretty effective for the most part of the game. But as inevitably happens when you play like that, you run out of steam a little bit, which is what happened with Union. They just kind of the last 20 minutes, they ran out of a bit of energy, I thought, and the game kind of petered out a bit for them. I think the point could yet turn out to be kind of quite a significant one for them, with obviously the gap being reduced. I actually thought, you mentioned the Open fans. I thought Open Zoo had turned up. We had pandas and we had pigs there and we had all sorts of things. I thought that was one of the highlights of the weekend for me.
No, definitely. Yeah, big point for them. They really do need it. And they have kind of dropped into the third bottom spot. But it stops a run of 3 defeats in a row. In context as well, travelling to the leaders, yes, without fans in and but still a good point to pick up considering, like what you said, they were defending for most of the game. I mean, we'll quickly brush over the game I watched on Saturday, the Oostende Sint-Truiden one, because there really isn't much to talk about. I mean, again, you talk about the highlight of that one being all the dress up in the stands. I think the highlight of this one was Binky and the Oostende mascots messing around at half time. Like, literally barely anything happened. Quite an even game. Like, both teams did try. It's not like they sat back and defended, but it was just quite a stodgy midfield battle. Neither side really got on top. I think the closest anyone came was Kenny Rocha Santos was quite a fierce shot from outside the box, which was well saved by Daniel Schmidt in goal for Sint-Truiden. There's really not much to say about this. I know you didn't watch it, Scott, and I don't think you'll have seen any highlights because there literally weren't any. So I guess the only thing to really say, I guess, a good point for both teams. Like, it's not the end of the world. Sint-Truiden, that's 4 unbeaten now. That was 3 wins on a bounce going to that one. For Oostende, that's another point away from the relegation scrap. I mean, I know they've said they don't think they're safe. Van der Hag said we still need a couple more points, but against an informed Sint-Truiden team that had got 9 out of 9, they'd probably have been happy with that at the end of the day. But let's just not talk about that game because it really wasn't that eventful. Let's talk about the game that you watched because that was way better. Mechelen against Club Brugge. Everything. Mechelen taking the lead, really nicely worked goal once again. Hugo Kuipers just timed his run perfectly to stay on side. I mean, Cercle will probably watch it and think, we should have stepped. I think one defender's playing him on and should have stepped higher, but he kind of holds it a little bit and then darts through to make it 1-0. And then Jeffrey Hermans does all the hard work for Vinicius Souza's goal. He could cross it first time, he could cross it second time, but he holds on to it, keeps it for a little bit. He's got great feet in the box, lays it back. Vinicius Souza absolutely lashes it in. At that point, you're looking at 2-0 to Mechelen. You're thinking, they want a bit of form at the moment. This is good. But you can't count Cercle out. And in the 43rd minute, Mechelen's lack of defending at set pieces and corners and crosses, free kick from Dino Hotic. Selimeang's he's lurking on the edge of the box and you're not really sure if he's going to make the run or not. He makes the run, no one tracks him and he heads it in quite easily. And then Denki made it 2-2 in the 45th minute. I think it was another corner comes in, bobbles around a bit and he's just there to finish that one off. Into the second half, bit I saw from the highlights, Hans van der Bruggen gets his second yellow card in the 69th minute. Ironically, what was quite funny about this one is he does the tackle and Sandy Walsh is straight over being like, you got to send him off, that's his second yellow. Fast forward about 5-6 minutes, Vinicius Souza takes out Matondo. Sandy Walsh is over there again, be like, no, that's definitely not a second yellow, ref, not a second yellow, ref. Have you sent him off? I was like, this is literally identical. How can you be moaning about one, mate, when you've got exactly the same happening? And I mean, that's just football, isn't it? Everything that's bad for your team, you never think about good for the other team, all that sort of stuff. But Scott, as someone who watched this game fully, was it as entertaining as the highlights were making it out to be?
Yeah, this was a great game actually, and I thought beforehand it had the potential to be a great game because it's two sides that are both playing pretty well for the most part, both playing really good high-intensity attacking football these days as well. So I thought, this had all the ingredients to be a cracking game, and thankfully it didn't disappoint. Yet again, we've seen Mechelen race into a 2-goal lead, which just evaporates for them. In truth, they were actually unlucky not to go on and win this. again, they created some great opportunities in the second half, and were unlucky, I think, not to win it in the end. Interestingly, Mechelen conceded from two stationary phases of play and two stationary phases within 2 minutes, which is really pretty bad when you think about it. And I think, conceding from stationary phases is a bit of a problem for Mechelen. It is something that we've seen from them this season and last season, and I think it's something for them to kind of have a look at. This is a little bit reminiscent of, what was happening with Joris's side, Genk, for a while. Towards the end of Van den Brom's time, where they went through this phase of conceding corners and from free kicks, and just stationary phases, them just switching off. And it's a bit like that with Mechelen as well. I mean, they were in relatively kind of comfortable space up until the kind of first goal. Cercle were playing pretty well. It was an even game, and it was a bit of a surprise to see Mechelen go into a 2-goal lead. And I thought, okay, well, they're going to go on and the game's going to open up now, and they'll probably get another one as Cercle go to chase this. But they switched off twice, and it became a different game in the second half. The thing that was great about this was the just two sides having a go at each other. No quarter given, as they say in battle. It was, two good sides having a right good go at each other. The red cards were kind of interesting. I thought they were probably both fair. Both Van der Bruggen and De Souza both picking up 2 yellows, which I think were fair, actually. I don't think they had many complaints, really. There was a few cynical challenges going on. Not awful ones, but enough that, when you've had a few already in the boot, a referee's never going to let you away with them. But it was such an open game that there was a lot of those kind of fouls where players had to bring people down to take one for the team, just to break up the play. And I think that's what happened to both the players for the Reds. The accumulation of fouls kind of caught up with them. But a good game, this. And I think this has this could be a good fixture on an ongoing basis for Belgian football, just because of what both these sides offer.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of entertainment, that was absolutely the game to watch on Saturday. And that's 3 goals and 3 now for Kevin Denke. So he's on a really good run of form and picking up the slack there and keeping Gambula out the side as well. Probably Cercle Brugge would have wanted the 3 points a little bit more than Mechelen in terms of pushing for that playoff 2. It just opens the gap up a little bit for them, but also for Mechelen, it could have pushed them a little bit closer into playoff 1 contention. The side in the bottom of the playoff 1 at the moment is Anderlecht. They drew 0-0 with Leuven. Unlike the St. Truiden Oostend game, this one was really good, actually. I'm surprised there weren't any goals. Unfortunately, there was an incident in the stands during this game which led to a long stoppage. One of the fans in the stand suffered from cardiac arrest. Thankfully, medical staff on hand to look after them and help them. And from what I read, they went to hospital conscious, which is just fantastic news. And I mean, all credit to the medical staff and everyone around them. The game was obviously stopped, which was good. And fair play to the players. They came back out and they still performed. Anything like that, I can imagine, is quite hard to then come back out and play a game of football. It just seems so irrelevant at the time. But yeah, obviously all of our wishes from the Belgian Football Podcast go out to that fan. It's just a horrible, horrible situation. But thankfully it sounds like they're going to be okay, which is the best thing that can possibly happen. On the pitch, there were plenty of chances for both sides. I think the thing with Leuven, you know that when they play against a good side, they will give it to them and they will push at them. And at times, I feel like their formation just caused Anderlecht so many problems. The movement of Mertens and Mercier, he just doesn't have that set position, and the way he drifts around and pings the ball around. And they love that. Mercier drops into kind of like a right midfield slot. Mertens playing high left and cutting in on the run. A couple of times that opened up and he probably should have scored. I guess one of the highlights of this was a save from Van Klomberger in the first half, I believe, from a set piece, which was just outstanding reactions from him. And again, another one to add to his personal highlight reel, because he has definitely got one going on. Did end a little bit badly for Anderlecht, with Murillo getting his second yellow card in the 88th minute and Vincent Kompany being sent off as well. So I think you could tell there was some frustration around there. Scott, I don't know how much of this game you saw, but just kind of talking about Anderlecht more kind of in general, I find sometimes that while I think Kompany has done a good job and I think they play some exciting football at times, I feel like there's a rigidity to the formation. It's going to be 4-4-2 and the substitutions that are made are like for like almost. So Rahman, a striker, will come on for Xerxes, a striker, or Rafaev and Vasharan will come off for El Hadj and Amuzu. Like, it'll be very much like Olsen comes on for Ashimura comes on for Olsen. Like, it's like for like. It's never really feels like, okay, companies actually change the formation with this substitution, if you know what I'm saying, to kind of like try and change the game. Because I genuinely think Leuven's formation was causing them a lot of problems.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an argument that they've become a little bit predictable. I think he's sticking with something that has, by and large, worked for the majority of the season for them, so I can kind of understand him doing that. Again, it's like, and we mentioned this what feels like ages ago now, I think that it's a club that, again, I think there could be a lot of change again in the summer for various reasons. So I think, the decision was taken a long time ago to have a period of stability, and I think the way they've been playing has got a lot to do with that as well. And it's worked very well for the most part, so they've kind of stuck with it. But I think you raised an important point about, well, what happens if Plan A actually just isn't working? A lot of coaches stick to it because they only have a Plan A. I mean, that's obviously the big criticism that's been thrown at Marcelo Bielsa this week in the wake of his departure, and really was the reason given, unfortunately, for him losing his job at Leeds, because he doesn't apparently have a Plan B, and it's that thing, I suppose, of, well, it's a kind of coach's prerogative to kind of stick things out as long as they want. It is interesting because when he does make a change, what we've seen this season is it's not generally formation based either as well. It's minor tactical in the sense that it's somebody who will play in the same role, but maybe is a better use of space. For example, I mean, some of his substitutions are a little bit conservative, I think you kind of could argue, but it's difficult to criticise him when, for the most part, the results have been kind of coming, and they by and large are still sitting where they want to be. It wasn't a surprise to me that Leuven gave them problems, because I don't think Vincent Kompany's had a win at the Den Reef yet, so it's a difficult place to go for any side, particularly in this kind of late stage of the season now, where Leuven have found quite a good period of consistency and form, and they've been struggling to kind of get a real foothold for the majority of the season, and have looked a bit adrift. And we talked as well a few times about how we felt that not being able to bring anyone in, they had a sort of disappointing summer and the lead up to the season start, and then their winter window wasn't great either. But it's turned out that Sorikawa coming back, he's been great since he came back, and some of the players who've been there for a while have started to perform quite well in the second half of the season. So they're having a reasonably strong end to the season, and I think Mark Bryce will probably be kind of quite happy with the way things are kind of ending for them, as we face the end of the regular part of the season anyway, considering, the bigger picture. I think Vincent Kompany's red card amused me quite a lot. Big Vinny, as we know, likes to wear his heart on his sleeve, and he was pretty apoplectic with the referee, and swearing good style. And I think the thing that annoyed him was, I think he felt there was a foul in the lead up to the red card before they even got there. That's what I think. He was screaming for that, I think. Yeah, and it just I quite like seeing that passion on the touchline. I think, and I've said a few times, I think referees need to be a bit smarter and just show a bit of discretion. And was it yeah, it probably was another yellow, but I think you just have to, you have to be smart and show your discretion there. And I think Vinny lost his cool a little bit, which managers tend to do, because he didn't really need to send him off there, I think. And Murillo's actually been quite good for them recently, and I think that's probably part of the frustration as well, because this is going to enforce a change upon him that, ironically, as we've just been talking about, he doesn't really want to make. But yeah, this game, it's a shame we didn't see some goals in it, because it was a decent game from what I did see of it. And you're right, Van Krombrugge had a fantastic save in this game that was probably save of the weekend. Gaitan Cook, who we were just talking about Mechelen a little while ago, he had a brilliant double save in that game against Circle, which I think was just slightly outdone by Van Krombrugge's effort here. But a good game for what was a game that finished 0-0.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, on Cook as well, like, just kind of go back to him, he's definitely like stepped up a level this season. I think he's definitely pushed on as a keeper. Same with Von Kronberg. I think in terms of like shot stopping, we always say he's definitely up there as one of the best. It's just the footwork and stuff that needs work on. But yeah, good, really was a good game despite the 0-0 and despite the incident in the stands. Let's move on to the big one on Sunday. It was Club Brugge against Antwerp. I guess we got to talk about goalkeepers for the first Antwerp goal, because Simon Mignolet has had the most bizarre nightmare of a goal I've ever seen. A ball comes in, I think it's from a corner, isn't it? Abdoulaye Seck heads it, and it's Seck's a big bloke. He's a strong bloke, but there's no power on this header, and it's just looping over Mignolet. You just got to catch it. And I think he just lost it in the sun or something. He just completely lost track of it. And it goes over his head. I think Van Aken then sprints back to head it off the line, heads it straight to Mikkel Frey, who then heads it in. And Mignolet just looks baffled. The fans behind the goal are rightfully like, what have we just seen? That was ridiculous. And especially when you consider how big this game was at the time, to give away a goal like that, you're like, wow, Flip, like, this is bad for Club Brugge to do something like that. However, 2 minutes later, Skov Olsen was the architect for a fantastic equaliser. His cross was he was begging to be headed in. And it was that man, Dennis Adoy, everyone's favourite Club Brugge player. Perhaps now he started to kind of get the fans on side, I don't know, with a goal like that. Fantastic bullet header into the net. And then the backflip celebration, which I think he's into his 30s now. So seeing someone like that, I mean, fair play to Dennis. Fantastic header from him. Couple of minutes later, game completely flipped on its head. Bigger Verstraete with a handball, which I think it's going to be given. I don't think you can really argue about it. His hand's away from his body. He blocks kind of the cross shot. I think it's from Buchanan, isn't it? In that situation, yeah, I don't think there's much argument about it. Even he just kind of was like, okay, yeah, fine. Hans Van Aken stepped up, made it 2-1 going into half time. And Club Brugge continued into the second half, 59th minute. The man that we've spoken so much about recently, Sargis Adamian, gets his second goal of the season. Again, it was really good work. I think from Buchanan again? Really good work on the left-hand side. Crossed it in. Adamian. It's a nice kind of turn finish, but it does take a deflection to go past Butte, who I don't know, if it doesn't take the deflection, I think it just goes straight at him, and it's a comfortable save, but deflection carries it in. And then Skov Olsen gets the goal that he's probably deserved since his move. Fantastic strike into the bottom corner from the edge of the box a couple of minutes after that. I think it's 5 minutes after the Adamian goal. And it's 4-1. And I mean, I don't know about you, Scott, but I did not see a 4-1 result coming. I thought this game would be a lot cagier. I thought it'd be a lot tighter than this. I was thinking if someone's going to win it, it's going to be like a 2-1, 1-0. I think Antwerp probably did miss having Richie Delat in the side. I think he gives them that leadership at the back that they were definitely missing. But massive result for Club Brugge.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed by them this weekend, actually. I thought, considering how they conceded that first goal, like you say, to turn it around like that is pretty good going. Skov Olsen's goal was absolutely fantastic, and he's been very good since he came in without doing anything specifically impressive. It's just his body language and his energy, and I think where he's been picking the ball up to and where he's been delivering it from, I think positionally he's just been very good. And he's been on record as talking about how much he wanted this move, and he looks like he's enjoying being there in his early days at Bruges. And I think he's starting to contribute now in a meaningful way. Obviously, they want him to get goals and provide assists, but he's starting to look fitter as well in the last couple of weeks in particular. And I know when he first arrived, obviously, he wasn't 100% fit for various reasons, and his first couple of appearances were kind of cameos really, rather than anything significant. But he's looking now like he's as fit as he should be. And he's obviously feeling better about that already. So, he's really kind of starting to turn it on. I think when you look at the numbers behind this game, actually, like you say, it was kind of surprising that they scored 4. But when you pick apart the numbers in a bit more detail, I was having a look at this earlier. Actually, it kind of backs up the kind of 4 goals. I mean, their XG in the game is 1.84. In the first half, it's 1.45. And when you consider they had 17 shots in the game, 9 of which were on target, then all in all, that comes in at round about, an expected, goals of about 4. So they did get statistically what they deserved for their performance, which will be good for the video analyst, I think. There was a little incident in this game that was interesting where Hans van Aken, was apparently made contact with Michael Frey's face, which he made kind of quite a lot of, and it was one of those instances where sometimes there's a thing where players now tend to put their arm out to create a little bit of distance themselves, when someone's kind of quite tight in their body, and instead of using an elbow or having a kind of clenched hand, because that can get them into trouble, they fan their hand out, which I think is almost just as bad, because the intention there is exactly the same, but it looks ridiculous when players go down like that, because obviously that does not have the same sort of contact as anything sharper. And I think players have sometimes just forgot that there are cameras everywhere now. And the Brian Prisk's on the touchline trying to make big play of that as well, when obviously there wasn't a kind of great deal in it. And actually, you're going to use any part of your body you can to buy you an inch or two, so you can see whether something is malicious in contact intent and whether somebody is just simply using their body, frankly, to muscle out of a challenge. And that kind of amused me, because I thought that's becoming a bit of a thing, actually, this fanned hand thing that players do. I don't know if it's discussed on the training ground or whatever, but there's been quite a few instances of that in recent weeks, and there was another high profile one there. But yeah, Bruges really impressive this weekend, and I quite enjoyed this game. I thought this was a great advert for the Pro League. Good atmosphere at the game as well, almost a full house. We're getting much closer to that now as well. So it felt like a big high profile game, which of course it was.
Yeah, no, the atmosphere is fantastic. And just thinking about that Van Aken Frey incident, kind of like Van Aken's got quite skinny arms. So I can imagine if it was the other way around, it might have been a bit more painful for someone like Van Aken if meaty Frey's hand kind of like punched him or clutched him in the face. I know what you mean. It has become more of a thing. It's almost like a push-off, but it's not. And like doesn't look as bad because of the manner of it, but it is technically you're still doing the same thing.
Can we call that fan off? Is it like a fan
yeah,
off?
Like
you can describe it as a hand fan.
Hand fan. Yeah, there we go. We've come up with the term for it at least. No, but yeah, massive result for Club Brugge. I think Scott Olsen next season, he's going to be one of the better players in the league by a long shot, and quite crucial to anything Club Brugge want to do in Europe and domestically, for sure. One side that would love to have a chance of playing in Europe is Genk. They hosted Kortrijk and absolutely dominated this game, despite only scoring goals within 6 minutes of each other, just 2 as well. Big Paul Onuachu got the open on the 16th minute, just completely unmarked for a header. I mean, even if you're marking him, he's going to probably win the header because how big he is. But if you're not marking him, it's just the easiest thing in the world. He gives them the 1-0 lead. A couple of minutes later, ball to the back post to Onuachu again. Fantastic header back across. He puts the pace on it perfectly for Pansel to come in and tap home. And that was that. 29 shots overall in the game from Genk kind of tells the story of this one. I know Masaudu had a decent chance to kind of get back into it, but he completely fluffed it. And that was kind of it. Really, really good performance from Genk in the end. Dominated possession, passing, kind of all facets of the game. Kortrijk didn't even get one corner, and we know how good they are from set pieces and corners. Like, that's kind of their danger zone, but not even getting one. I mean, that shows how well Genk defended in this game. Scott, I guess this is kind of the performance we expected from Genk throughout the season. It just kind of frustrates in terms of what their inconsistencies have been.
Yeah, this game I think is kind of the reverse scenario of the game we were just talking about. And that if you look at the numbers, Genk should have won by a lot more than 2. 29 shots, 9 shots on target. In fact, the numbers are actually, the Genk's numbers are very similar in this game to Club Brugge's numbers in the game against Antwerp, and they get half the number of goals. That's football. You know what I mean? One game in which the numbers are identical go a very different way. But yeah, I mean, Genk are definitely improving. Which will please our Joris. He'll be happy with that. I think the signs are kind of quite positive for the most part. And Illich had to work kind of quite hard in this game. He had seven saves, which you would expect for numbers like that. I didn't see all of this game. I saw the highlights, but you could just tell that Genk were in complete control of this game, and that this was just one that Kortrijk were never really in. I mean, while I've talked a lot about numbers this week, I mean, one that surprised me, Kortrijk's XG from set plays in this game was literally zero. Which, I mean, how is that even possible? Even if you're not having a great game, I think we spoke quite a lot about Kortrijk in recent weeks, and although they're not on a great run of form for the most part and haven't been arguably for probably a couple of months, they're still not playing that badly, even though they're not picking up points. And it's interesting that I think this kind of highlights the fine margins of football sometimes, in that you can actually play all right and be in a bad run, and it still not affect your form too much. So the important thing for me is you can tell that squad's heads aren't going down. It's not affecting their confidence. They keep going. I think they have obviously belief and confidence in one another in that group, and trust in their manager at the moment, because the performances are still there, even if the results aren't coming, and that's a huge positive for them to continue taking out of this. And they're going to be okay. They don't really have any worries now, despite the run of form that they're in. But there's still plenty of positive things going on at Kortrijk, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think they could get someone like Pap Habib back, and kind of, if you look at their squad, there's some really young players in key positions, especially in the striking department. They don't have, since Teddy Chevalier obviously left, they don't have that kind of recognisable striker that's banging the goals. So I think something like that would be important. And Bayo's emerged a lot this season since moving from Ghent. He's been a fantastic pickup, like kind of, he shifted Moreno out of the team and made that spot his own. And yeah, you say there's a lot of good things going on there. Their shirts as well. Like, I got one the other day. The away shirt is it's beautiful. They're beautiful, beautiful shirts and really well designed. So kudos to them and the artwork going in there. We have got, I think there's a picture up on our Twitter account. So if you are interested in looking at what the shirt looks like, it's one of the match-worn ones by Pap Habib himself, although he hasn't played for quite a while now. But hopefully we'll see someone like him back soon, because I think they could do with his presence up front. I think Badamosi's still got a little bit more development to do before he can be kind of like the leader of the line. One side that's definitely not doing well and definitely needs, well, I don't know, is former Kortrijk manager, now current Standard Liège manager, Luca Elsner's Standard side. They lost 1-0 to Ghent. It could have been a lot more. There were about 2 or 3 disallowed goals in this one. First from Tisa Dali, which was a really nice cross. However, there'd been a offside in the build-up to it, reasonably far in the build-up, but enough that it did affect the play, so it was the correct call. Second half, Jordan Torunariga also looked like he'd given them the league and got his first goal for Ghent, but that was also ruled offside. In between those two, Vadis or Gigi Ofoy was sent off basically straight away in the second half, and I don't know, this was harsh, but I think this was really harsh. I mean, there's one replay you see where it looks bad, but then every other replay you look at, you're like, yes, he lands on Tapsoba's leg, but everything about what he's doing isn't in that motion. Like, it's not deliberate. You can tell he's looking the other way. He's about to go run the other way. His foot kind of slips and then lands on Tapsoba's leg. And it was just one of those ones where you're like, let's have some common sense here. Like, you can give him the yellow card because of how it looks, but I just don't think a red was warranted in this situation, especially when earlier in the game there'd been an incident where Tapsoba had gone into Hans Olsen quite high up on the knee, on the shin. That wasn't given a red card, but it was equally as dangerous. But again, I don't think that was a red card either. I think that was the correct call, just a yellow. I think Hans Olsen came over and said that. He was like, what about that one over there, ref? So that was a bit of a sour note on a game that really Ghent were the better team in. I think Standard, you could tell they just lacked any confidence. No Edmond up front. Absence, they had Dragus and Tapsoba, so really young kind of strike force that just didn't really threaten the Ghent defence, which is the second best defence in the league and not one you want to go up against when you're really struggling for goals. I mean, I think they've only conceded, 27 goals? The best is 22 with Union, and no other teams conceded less than 30 outside of those two. So if you're struggling for goals and you haven't got kind of your best striker there, you're always going to struggle. They did finally get the winning goal. Poor Bodart made an absolute howler. I mean, Mignolet's was bad, but I think at least he could blame the sun. This one, Bodart just, I think his concentration just went, routine kind of shot coming at him. He just kind of had to catch it, just slip through his hands. Tissoudali heads it in. He starts to celebrate. They all start to celebrate. I think it's when Heisenberg's there, like, lads, just calm down because we've already had 2 go off. Like, we might not even get this one. However, he was clearly onside for this one. And Ghent win 1-0, puts them kind of with the draw for Anderlecht, that they're now only 3 points off playoff 1, 4 wins in a row. Where Standard, that's 3 defeats on the bounce. They are only 6 points ahead of Seraing. They play Beerschot this week, which you just feel like, Scott, they have to win that game, don't they? Like, a draw, I don't think it's going to appease the fans at all, because even after the game, the fans were there kind of outside. Even before the game, they were there trying to build it up. Obviously, they weren't allowed in, but I can't imagine they're going to accept anything less than a victory against bottom side Beerschot.
Yeah, it feels like kind of Groundhog Day for Standard Liège, and it's felt like that, for the whole season. And certainly, it's felt like that for us, kind of watching them a little bit as well. Such is the level of kind of problems at the club, and obviously there's the new owners potentially kind of coming in, and all of the implications of that as well. And that's a kind of constantly changing scenario. Obviously, a lot happened this week as well in the run up to this game, with the owners and Bruno Venanzi, owner of the club, kind of coming out and saying that in order to kind of G the players up and get them to kind of face the reality of the situation, they were being refused access to physios, not allowed access to sleeping facilities at the academy, being kept away from certain culinary privileges, all sorts of, kind of elite footballing support services, kind of, keep players' mental health and physical well-being, in peak shape, just removed in an attempt to motivate the players. And if anything, the reaction we saw this weekend was a negative one. Was players, they didn't look particularly energised. They didn't really look like they wanted to win that game. To me, they were kind of playing totally within themselves, and they're obviously not feeling great about themselves for a whole host of reasons. And I know a lot's been made in some quarters of the media about the squad apparently being very behind Luca Elsner, and there being a good feeling about him. And there's actually nothing to suggest, in my view anyway, that's true at all. I don't get a sense that they're playing for him or themselves. There's not enough effort going in there, that's for sure. We all know there's not enough quality in the squad. We've known that for ages, but some of the basics just aren't right. I mean, some of the passing alone, some of the basic passing, and a lot of that game was just horrendous for them. Their choices, the actual passes were just wrong. Balls going out of play that are players who are only yards away. And I thought, well, that's a side to their low in confidence. Their concentration isn't great, and they just didn't look particularly interested and engaged. And Ghent slowly worked themselves into the game after a slightly slow start, actually, and inevitably got over the line. And it's a really bad sign, I think, Ben, that you can play against 10 men for half a game and not make any leeway out of that at all. They didn't look noticeably better when they were up against 10, didn't really create any more chances at that point, Standard, so it didn't make any difference to them. And we know playing against 10 men sometimes is harder, of course it is, but you would never have known that was the case. I know we had a laugh about that while watching the game, that you could never have, somebody would have to tell you. It wasn't obvious. The obvious thing a side does is they start to move the ball faster from side to side. You look for the space and you look for the channels and basic things like that. I was like, well, they're not even trying to do that. They just didn't look interested. I did think it was funny that when Ghent did scored, Van Heisenbroek was like, calm down. We've got excited twice before and we just can't be sure. And he was quite vocal afterwards about some of Jonathan Lardo, the referee's decision making in this game, and said, look, you cannot go to VAR and get so many decisions wrong like they did. It's just not on. Or he said it in a very kind of polite way, and I think he was right, actually. often when managers come out now and say something about referees, it's kind of pointless because you know the way it's going to go. There's going to be a fine, there's going to be a ban, and it's just, they can't say it. We can, obviously. But I think he was absolutely right to do that because some of the decisions in this game were just bizarre. And the red card, I felt like Vinny Company. I felt raging watching it. We said this, didn't we, when we were watching the game, that, that was just outrageous. I think there was some sweary emoticons doing the rounds, everybody, amongst our conversations, because it was so obviously the wrong decision. It looks bad on one particular angle, but when you see other angles, you see Adi just looking in a different direction, and his foot actually slips, so he can't plant it properly, and he doesn't know where he is planting it. So it's obvious when you have the benefit of more than one angle that it's a mistake. So my advice to the referees would be to go and play some five-a-side football, go and play a little bit more, get into some actual match situations, some real simulations, and then you might be able to discern what is obviously an accident and kind of what isn't. Yeah, it was just enraging stuff, and a poor performance from Jonathan Lardo. I don't like to touch on referees much either because it's a pointless waste of energy thing. But I kind of could not single him out this week because I just thought he was terrible actually. In a weekend where we saw some other quite controversial decisions as well, which we'll touch on in a little while. But yeah, Ghent have been doing the business for a while now and absolutely knocking on that playoff one door with both feet and both hands by the looks of it. And if they can keep this form up, then I wouldn't bet on them sneaking in there in the end. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. Just agree with all of that. It was just, it's such a ridiculous decision. And there is something about Van Heisenberg that I was just watching him and I was like, you remind me of someone. And I finally worked out, he's like, whenever you go to like a pub or a club, he's the bouncer outside checking your IDs that just looks fuming, when he stands there with a big coat on, the hat on, like you can barely see him. Like he cracks me up every time I watch the game. There's just something so funny about him. I just can't kind of put my finger on it, like his expressions and everything. So
he has this little physical thing he does, no matter how he's feeling in a game, where he likes to kind of brush the turf with the turf of his toes as well. So it's like a little kick, a little tickle of the grass actually. And I've always found that kind of interesting because there's something slightly passive aggressive about it, but because it's such a gentle motion, it's kind of hard to see it that way. And whenever I watch it, I think, he has the look of somebody who's about to explode into rage at any moment. But then when you think he's going to kick off, he laughs and just kind of shrugs his shoulders. So there's this slightly uncomfortable thing I have about watching him where I never quite know how he's going to respond.
Passive aggressive is definitely kind of the vibe I get from him. Kind of everything's kind of like, it's chilled on the surface, but I reckon you start to push the buttons and start to press anything there, he's like, I'm not taking any of this. But yeah, no, I think with them, it's just like, if they can keep Tisu Dali firing, they're going to be really pushing playoff one, because he finishes everything off for them. He is like the complementary piece. And I was just watching them as well. I was like, Samwaz wasn't playing, and Samwaz has been fantastic, but then they can just fill in with Castro Montes on that right hand side. Like the depth they have in that right midfield wing position is just like enviable for most sides. And I do feel for Standard fans just watching that game, and I'm just like you said, where there wasn't that passion, that energy, and that's one thing I've felt with them this season. Is like when I've watched most of their games, I've always felt, okay, they are trying, they are pushing, but they just haven't quite got enough quality. But I didn't feel any of that, and I'm like, is that because the fans weren't there? Do they had nothing to feed off, or is it because they've been basically treated like crap for the week and then been told like, oh, this will motivate you? And I think anyone that's worked anywhere knows that normally that doesn't work. Like in any line of work, if you treat someone badly, like, yes, you could maybe take away a couple of privileges, but to deny them like loads of different things, I think there's better ways to motivate them to play. And especially the young players, like that could be really, it doesn't make it like a nice place by the sound of it. And we've heard quotes from players that have left recently that saying that it isn't a nice place to be at the moment, not because of the manager, because of everything that's going on around it. So yeah, I think they've got to beat Beerschot, but I can genuinely see them losing that game because Beerschot, like we said earlier, they're not playing terribly. They just can't defend. But then Standard just don't seem to be able to score. So you're like, is it even a 0-0? I'd be disappointed for them because, yeah, it's just not a good sign. And I think they need to make a decision with this summer, like, who do we see as the man to take us through this? Is it Elsner? Are we going to back Elsner? Are we saying we've seen enough on the pitch, off the pitch, that we think if we give you time and players and stuff that you'll get us back up? Or are they going to be like, actually, we need someone else to do that? And I think that's the big decision they've got to make. I don't think they'll go down. I think they're going to be okay, just because of teams we'll talk about next are just worse than them at the moment. I think they've got some players in that will scrap for them when they come back. I think if they get Emon back, they get Amala back. They've got a little bit more quality in those players, but there's positions all over the pitch where they need to strengthen. And yeah, I guess for them, the end of the season cannot come soon enough.
I think it's funny, isn't it? Because Standard's club slogan is passion, fervour, pride, and has been for a long time, and it's plastered everywhere around the stadium and will be on the walls inside the stadium, and I'm sure it's on the dressing room almost certainly as well. It's all over the social media, of course it is, and they're all of the things that are kind of missing at the moment. And when the news kind of came out this week about all of those privileges being withdrawn in an attempt to motivate them, I thought this is just not going to end well. But yeah, they've got some big decisions to make. I agree with you. I think they are going to be fine as well. I think probably one more win will be enough for their season to kind of peter out. But they've got some bigger decisions to kind of make longer term once they decide, Bruno Van Ansi decides on who the new owners are going to be, who's going to sell 3/4 of the shares too, because he's going to kind of stay involved. And then the owners, obviously, they'll have the major say in who the man, in a footballing sense, is to kind of take them forward longer term. 3 wins in 18 for Luca Elsner really isn't good. And it absolutely isn't all his fault, because the club are in a really difficult position. But, when those tough footballing decisions have to be made, it's always the coach that goes. It's never the CEO who goes, do you know what, I made some wrong calls, I'm going to go, someone else can kind of come in. So if there's going to be a change, it's going to be Elsner who goes, and not anybody else, which is obviously unfortunate. But I do think he is a bit of a dead man walking, and I think we have to say that, because he's almost in a no-win situation there, I think, as well, which is very difficult for him. I think he knows that, to be fair. He's not, he's smart. He is a smart coach who's open-minded, as we know. So I think he'll be aware of that, and I think that's probably the only positive he can personally take out of things at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it's also it's almost doing wonders for Mbaille's CV as well at the same time, because he can go to other clubs and be like, look, it actually wasn't my fault. Like, I actually did all right. I got us to a cup final. I did this and this and this. So give me another chance. Because he must be watching this and thinking, yeah, like, the same issues are still arising. Like, he didn't really get many players in either. So yeah, I think, like we said, I think they're going to be okay, but it's a big kind of transition summer coming up where they just need to get some energy back into the playing side of things, because they've got the energy in the stands. That's never been an issue. Like, the fans will turn up, the fans will support the team, they'll harangue the team when they're not playing well, and we know that that's been an issue recently, to the point where I don't think they're sold tickets for the upcoming home game until they were like, we'll wait to see what the behaviour is like after the Beerschot game. So I was like, you better win, because if you win, then all the fans can turn up. But if they don't win, I don't think they're going to be best pleased. So.
I think it's the fundamental problem they've got is the same problem that another club that we're going to talk about in a minute have, and it's to do with the culture inside the club. I think, it's a club that's been mismanaged now for a number of years on different levels, and obviously new owners become very important, not just because of the financial implications, but because that's going to be at the root of the kind of culture change, new people, new ideas, new emphasis and approaches, and that affects everything at a club, both the footballing side and things off the non-technical side of things as well. So that has to happen as soon as possible for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah, absolutely, and hopefully we'll start to see some movement on that soon, to see kind of what will emerge from that. Yeah, I think I know which side you're talking about. Let's talk about the relegation battle. I think we promised you goals, and unfortunately neither side could deliver that many. It was only 1-0 in the end, but flippin' heck, Seraing, like, how did you not win this game? Absolutely dominated in terms of possession, chances, it felt as well, like 70% possession away from home. Like, you can't say they didn't try, but they just didn't have that finishing touch at all. Like, I think Maziz had a great chance in like the first 5 minutes, couldn't finish it. Cisse had a fantastic chance that he just had to bury, which I think he hit the post, or maybe it was a save. We both kind of weren't quite sure because there were just bodies everywhere. My stream was so blurry, I could barely see a thing, but I did see it. I was like, that's got to be a goal, and it wasn't. Zulte were just like happy to sit back and like lump the ball over the top and hope that Garno would run onto it, which he did quite a few times, to be fair to him. And one time that absolutely paid off, ball went flying over the top. He lashed onto it, shot away, got kind of straight at Deesh, but Deesh just kind of pushed it straight back into the central areas that I think we were talking about when we Scott on our chat. We were like, you've got to push that to the side of the goal if you can. He pushed it straight into the middle, and Jelle Vossen was there, and he's just not going to miss from there, the veteran striker. And that was the only goal of the game. To be fair to Zulte, they did have a couple more chances in the second half, but Seraing basically had control of the midfield. They had control of the ball so much. They had so much time at the back. Zulte's kind of game plan, I guess it did work, but they weren't the better side. And I think I was having a chat with David Parks. We're having a chat on Twitter, kind of like, how are Seraing not winning? And you are saying they're kind of just like a 1B side playing in 1A at the moment. That's what it really does feel like, in terms of the goals have just completely dried up. Like, they started the season as one of the most exciting attacking sides, and now they're the lowest scorers in the league with just 26 goals in 29 games. So it's just completely fallen off. And I think the manager the other day was talking about how Mikotadze's kind of taken it all on himself to score, and he's put loads of pressure on himself to be the scorer for the team. And I think you can see that in the way his confidence just drops. I mean, there was one moment in the game where he just did this fantastic bit of skill, like a little flick back nutmeg, and then a kind of roulette spin around another player, and you're like, okay, Mikotadze's on it today. And they, to be fair to them, Scott, they were actually on it. Like, as a team, I thought they played really well. They couldn't score against the worst defense in the league, and I think that kind of sums it up in a way. And I think we said, or have said, we think Zulte will be, if they're gonna stay up, it's Jelle Vossen and Zina Gana that are going to be the difference for them, and that proved to be it on this game.
Yeah, Seraing actually played really quite well in this game, and I think this is the best they've played probably for a number of months. I mean, I remember they went to Den Reef to play Leuven a while ago and were superb that evening. And actually, the performance level here was similar to that. It was really, really very good. I mean, again, when you look at the numbers, you look at the numbers and you think, how did they not win that? You know, I mean, we know they can't draw, but they should have at least drawn when you look at the numbers. And they controlled the vast majority of this game, even after when they went behind, and were still kind of looking to get back into the game. And it was interesting watching Seraing coach Jean-Louis Garcia's kind of body language during this game. He was proud on his technical area, and there was a lot of kind of quite positive gesticulating going on. He was indicating in various directions and shouting a lot of instructions, and there was a lot of passion kind of going on there, a lot of communication, and everything, from a technical point of view, was done right, other than kind of putting the ball in the net. And it's one long ball over the top that made the difference in this game in the end. Deitch obviously has what I think's a kind of key mistake on that, and he does spill it into the worst possible area right in the middle of his 18-yard box, because at that point a ball can go anywhere and anyone can kind of pick it up, which is what happened. You don't want somebody like Jelle Vossen, with just an unchallenged run onto it there. But yeah, one long ball over the top. Keeper spells it in a bad area, and that's enough for you to lose the game. And it's, they when they're playing quite well, Seraing, like this, they play really positive football. Their movement's good. And, I remember saying to you while we were watching it, the first 15 minutes or so, I thought, if they can keep this intensity up, they're going to score here tonight, because of the defence we're playing against, and they're probably going to score a few. It just didn't happen for them. Cisse's one, I went and had a look at it again, because I thought, I have to see what actually happened, because I was in two minds. And he does actually hit the post with it. I thought it was, a really good save at the time, but, he hits the post, and it's the fine margins thing again. That goes in, and this is a different game. But I think you're absolutely right. I think, Zulte won't care, because Timmy Simons said before the game in the run-up to this, he said, look, performances and the way that we play are completely irrelevant. All that matters now is winning this particular game, because I think they knew win this game and they're probably going to be all right, which is the case. Zulte have this horrible habit of winning big games that they need to win, but then reverting to type and going in a bad run again, which I can very much see happening again. But I think there's going to be enough daylight now for this cushion, I think, to kind of see them all right. I think there's a bigger long-term problem for Zulte. I don't think they were the better of the two sides, even though they won the game. And I just wonder what are the ambitions of the club? Because if they go into, and I've said this before twice, I think recently, if they go into next season with the same coaching team and largely the same squad, then you're going to get the same result. There needs to be a kind of gutting of what's going on inside that club, and it comes back to what we're saying about standard and the kind of the sort of long-term mismanagement of the club to a certain extent, which is partly down to obviously having a head coach who was there forever and the consequences of that. I'm definitely of the opinion that in that scenario you just need a clean slate. I never felt it was a good idea having Timmy Simons and David Defoe kind of coming in to take over, because they're part of that culture, that regime, and that's not their fault. But psychologically, players respond in kind of the same way. They see it as the same thing, and the changes that are made are often subtle rather than wholesale. So somebody needs to come in and with no prior connection to the club almost, and do their own thing with their own staff. That's my feeling about it. And I have a real worry that they'll have a season very similar to this one if they don't make changes like that. And Seraing, I think, now probably are looking at, winning the playoff is going to be our best route to stay in the division. And that's not guaranteed, because they can't win games at the moment.
Yeah, no, definitely. And they had some fans kind of accosted the team bus after the loss to Ghent, and they put out a statement being like, look, we've climbed 2 leagues very, very quickly. Like, this wasn't expected. We're now here. Like, kind of like, let's have a reality check of how well we're doing and how against the odds what we've done is. Yeah, it was frustrating to watch. And it kind of, as much as I thought, okay, this is probably over, I was also watching it thinking like, I just don't think it is. If Seraing just suddenly start to score again, which they've got enough games to do it in, like coming up, obviously, unfortunately for them, they are running out games, but they've got Club Brugge on Saturday. Like, that's going to be, it's kind of like there's nothing to lose in that for them, which could be dangerous, like in a way that they're just not expected to pick points. But then they've got Standard, they've got Leuven, who then might be on their holidays, got Oostend and Genk. So they've got a couple of teams in Standard, Leuven and Oostend that maybe they could pick up points against. Zulte, on the other hand, they've got high-flying Ghent on Sunday, but Zulte, there's one of those teams that they might win. Zulte are game against Eupen on the 12th of March. That could be a really big one, depending on how Seraing do. Then they've got Antwerp, St. Truden and Charleroi. So both teams have kind of similar run-ins apart from that Eupen game, and Eupen are now fully back in the relegation kind of battle. But yeah, we'll get on to maybe that a little bit later. But I think you're right. I think Zulte, if you look at the squad and you're just like, lots of players have been brought in over the summer and in the winter, and you're just like, well, you can't really, it's very hard to see, okay, where this is the kind of core players that going forward we're going to keep and we're going to build upon. Like, they brought in lots of that kind of midfielders. Gaver's come back in, he's out again. Lasse Vigen started the season, he's out, doesn't really play as much. Dumbia came in on loan, he's in and out. Boyer came in on loan, he's in and out. Sex, kind of the only one who was there last year. He's been there before. Like, he's starting. Plentix as well, they're not too sure about. He's been relegated to kind of back up. Humphreys, they like, I think, but we're not sure. Like, do they? Solani, they bought in. Cools has been starting over him until this weekend. Like, it's all just very confusing. The only one you're really sure about is Garno starting, because even Vossen hasn't been starting. He's been off and on. Federa Kutesa, like, there's just so you can go through that whole squad and you could ask questions about whether or not the club actually will keep them or wants to keep them or thinks they can build upon them. So they need a new manager in who can assess the squad and then be like, right, I'm keeping these players, get rid of these players. I want to replace them with some other players that I want. Goalkeeping situation is going to be up in the air in the summer. Like, Sammy Bossett, he's not a long-term solution to the goalkeeping issue. Louis Boston, he's injured for the rest of the season now, so he couldn't really have a say, but are they convinced about him? Like, there's so many issues, and I think you're right. Clean slate, new manager, not from the Frankie Jury era. They'll probably just hire Frankie Jury again in the summer or something, won't they? They'll just be like, oh, yeah, come back. He said he's available. I'll just take him back. But yeah, because I think if it finishes like this, let's say Beerschot and Seraing go down, the two teams that come up like from that league, we're looking at Westerlo, good squad already. They'll add to it. They've already started looking at adding to it. If Molenbeek come on, we know they've got some financial backing now. Beveren, we know financially they can crack it at 1A as well. So these teams are going to go up and build and strengthen. And you're then looking at Zulte as one of the two worst teams if you count Eupen as well. If those are the two bottom teams, Eupen's completely up in the air next year. But if you don't strengthen and improve, like you're already starting as one of the two worst teams in the league, and it's just repeating the same mistakes again. So, I mean, big win, but it wasn't convincing in the slightest. Anyway, let's move on to kind of, I guess, more serious matters at the end of the day than relegation and promotion and all that. Obviously, our kind of hearts go out to all those affected by the conflict that's going on currently in Ukraine. Just heartbreaking stories coming out of Ukraine about just everyday people being caught up in this horrific kind of invasion that's going on. Obviously, in Belgian football, there's a long kind of history of Ukrainian players coming over to this league. We love having these Ukrainian players. They've absolutely lit up the league, many opportunities. And Scott, I know you kind of did a bit of fact gathering to kind of get around, not protest is completely the wrong word, but kind of like the endorsement of what's going on and kind of like the support that Belgian clubs were giving to these Ukrainian players in the stands.
Yeah, well, there's it's amazing. There's so many different facets to this. I mean, it's amazing how quickly things can change in a week. I mean, obviously, all of this has started properly since the last episode, and it feels like a lot's happened in within a week, which it has. There are 5 Ukrainian players who play their club football in Belgium. Obviously, Marian Shved at Mechelen, Edward Sobol at Club Brugge, Roman Bezos at Ghent, Bogdan Mikhailichenko at Anderlecht, and young Mykola Kukarevich at Leuven. Obviously, Roman Yaremchuk, who's probably the most high-profile Ukrainian player known to many, obviously has a strong Belgian connection, left Belgium recently to go to Benfica, got his big move. Yeah, difficult times for these guys, and I know all of us at the Belgian Football Podcast kind of stand in solidarity with kind of the people of Ukraine, and I just think it's kind of important this week for us to reflect a wee bit as well on the importance of, if you're going to a game as a fan, of showing that solidarity in whatever form kind of you can, because large-scale sporting events are kind of, what are they? They're ritualistic gatherings, and they're about people expressing their kind of identity and their club's culture and their own identity as well, and part of that's about reflecting the world that you want to live in. And it got me thinking as well about those who argue that kind of sport and politics shouldn't mix, when in fact, actually, it's important to highlight that nothing could be further from the truth, and that sport is one of the most political acts that anybody can use to kind of express themselves, and kind of should do, for the reasons I was talking about, because it is an expression of kind of culture and identity, and that is what a football club is. There's a culture within it, a history and identity, and these things kind of all come together kind of collectively when people ritualistically go to be with their community at a football match. And it's really important that these public expressions of solidarity are maintained and explored. And we saw some really strong examples of that this weekend in Belgian football. Edward Sobol, Club Brugge's left back, who I mentioned, he took the megaphone after the game. For those of you who don't know, Club Brugge have this routine of addressing their ultras after games, often for a little while with the megaphone and having a song and dance. And it was deliberately given to Edward Sobol this weekend. He came on and played the last 10 minutes of Bruges' win over Antwerp this weekend. Marian Shved, who's out of ranking this week, was saying had quite a difficult time, obviously, because his family are still back home in Ukraine. They're not with him in Belgium. So that must be very difficult for him, understandably. He played 15 minutes this weekend. Roman Bezos played slightly more. He played half of Ghent's game. He came on because of the red card, actually. There was 3 changes made by Van Heisenbroek at half-time, kind of tactical change. And the other two, Bogdan Mikhailichenko and Mykola Kukarevich, were both on the bench for Anderlecht and Leuven, but didn't feature this weekend. But yeah, really, really difficult times for everybody who has a Ukrainian connection. And I think it's just important that these signs of solidarity are kind of kept up as long as they need to be at football matches now. And we're starting to see the trickle-down effect of that. Footballing authorities now starting to exert their own influence, arguably too slowly, of course, and we'll see more as more pressure's exerted. But these things have a way of kind of gathering steam, and that's why these showings of fan solidarity and club solidarity and players as well, with messages under their t-shirts and more publicly on t-shirts as they head out onto the pitch in games, are so important, because often these instigate bigger acts as well. Really, really important, and we're definitely going to come back to this to talk about this, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think through something like this, seeing like what is happening, I know with FIFA, like there's some weird stuff about Russia playing as like the Russian Football Union or some nonsense like that they come up with about with like the Olympics and stuff. But seeing that is kind of to show fans that look, like it can be done, like with what is happening in Ukraine, and like we can bring that energy into the other issues. Like we've got the Qatar World Cup with the human rights issue there. Like we can do something about that. There's other conflicts going around the world where football is impacted because there are these links between the two. And I just feel like this has been kind of a sign. And because I guess because it's happening in Europe and we have these Ukrainian players, sometimes it does just feel a little bit closer. But to show fans that you can do this, and like, yeah, I think we can raise awareness of so many other things through football as well. I think you can't separate football from politics because it's just impossible. Like you literally have politicians involved in football clubs, you have states running football clubs, like all this sort of stuff kind of comes to a head at times like this. So yeah, definitely all our thoughts kind of go out to especially our Ukrainian friends from this podcast. We've got lots of people we know. Zori Londonsk is definitely an account to follow if you are kind of interested in what's going on in Ukraine. He is a fantastic account, not just for football, but he's very much in touch with the local people in Ukraine about what's going on, and definitely a reliable source. But also, yeah, I also wanted to give like some solidarity to those in Russia who are protesting against this. I feel like they deserve a lot of our respect and courage for what they're trying to do to stand up to their own country in that sense. So yeah, both sides of this in that sense of kind of the innocent people who are willing to take a stand in spite of kind of the situation that they're in, like massive credit to them. And let's hope that some good and peace will come. It's good to see that the Pro League has taken the stand and the fans have taken a stand to show some solidarity to those players. So yeah, long may it continue, and long may it continue into other avenues as well. I think it's always a good thing when we can promote good causes like that.
I think it highlighted, the famous phrase "football without fans is nothing," which is something we've seen a lot of over the last year and a half, 2 years with empty stadiums. I think similarly, football without politics for me is nothing, and it's very political, even in a situation unlike this one, but particularly in one like this, where actually I think the main point is that you can't duck it. You absolutely can't duck it, and shouldn't either.
Yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, hopefully FIFA will sort it out. It looks like UEFA are sorting out. None of the Belgian clubs have been affected in terms of ties. Ghent will be playing PAOK in the UEFA Conference League. To kind of segue back to the football. Yeah, so Ghent will be playing PAOK, so there obviously that tie won't be affected at all at the moment. I guess, Scott, we just quickly touch on that before we go to the 1B chat. I mean, I think we were both chatting, obviously you from the Celtic kind of point of view, that we're just glad they didn't get Bodo Glimt, because that team is just, I mean, those of you who have followed the Nordic Football Podcast guys will know a lot about Bodo Glimt, and I feel like people who've been living under a rock for a while haven't really noticed that this team is one of the better teams in Europe in terms of passing and playing football. So to get PAOK, I think it's going to be tough. Like Greece is a tough place to go and play. Thessalonica, like that's a tough place to play. PAOK's fans are like notoriously passionate for their club. So I think it's going to be a tough one for Ghent, but they've got absolutely nothing to lose. This is the beauty of the Conference League, though, isn't it? We've got a Belgian side against one of the big Greek sides in a knockout game of a European competition. No top 4, top 5 league in sight. It's just like, it's kind of what we wanted from this competition, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a good draw for Ghent, actually. It could have been a lot worse when you look at the potential sides they could have got. And it's a tie that they will look at rightly and go, okay, that's that. I think that's a winnable tie for us. It's not something really that we should fear. So from that point of view, it's good. If only it were that easy. They've still got to go and do the job. I think the positive thing, I think from our point of view, is a lot of Ghent's the foundations of what is turning out actually to be a pretty good season for them really kind of go back to the European campaign. That's when their form really started to kind of turn earlier in the season when they were chipping away at Europe, and the upturn there, I think, has led to a very positive bounce for them kind of domestically, I think. So it's been very good for them, European football, and hopefully that can continue for at least another 2 or 3 rounds yet, and I'm looking forward to that tie. And with any luck, we'll be able to bring you a little European preview as well before those games.
Yeah, absolutely. We've only got one team left, so not as much work to do for us in terms of finding people for these ones. But yeah, so those games will be played on the on the 10th and 17th of March. First game's away, but bear in mind Ghent did beat Partizan Belgrade away, and that's no mean feat either. But PAOK, I think they're second in the Super League in Greece, but they're quite a way off Olympiacos in first. But yeah, they're definitely no slouches, and hopefully we'll get someone with a little bit more knowledge than Scott and I on PAOK to give a nice little overview of the side from Thessalonica. Let's quickly move to 1B, where there's a lot of controversy this week, wasn't there, Scott? I mean, some cracking goals, but yeah, I mean, we've probably got to start on Molenbeek, haven't we? Because that was just ridiculous.
Oh yes, this is the goal that wasn't. Yeah, we kind of alluded to sort of referees having a bad weekend, and they just keep making us talk about them. Really, yeah, the goal that wasn't. Yeah, so this came, of course, in Molenbeek's home game against Lierse. Molenbeek eventually running out 3-1 winners. But the first goal, particular controversy, 10 minutes to go, the equaliser actually was a goal that was awarded that wasn't the ball, that did not cross the line, but the referee gave it in the end. Of course, many of you will know that 1B doesn't have VAR, and it just highlighted to me the fact that you have to have VAR at all games or no games, to be honest. It's not good enough to say the lower divisions don't deserve VAR, to be honest, and to get into the financials of it, because you get into kind of a two-tier system of officiating as well in that sense. And this wasn't even one of those close ones where you thought, okay, I could maybe see how they got that wrong. It's obviously not a goal. And some of the remonstrations, afterwards were quite unpleasant, and rightly so, because it was just absurd, the goal that wasn't. Molenbeek managed to get another couple of goals in stoppage time that weren't quite as controversial, so managed to turn that result around in their favour, which means that they've now got a 5-point gap in second over Beveren. But yeah, it's definitely heating up in 1B. 6 games to go now in the season there. Westerlo extending their lead as well. They managed to beat Beveren 2-1 in kind of the big topper game of the weekend. Virton losing again at home 2-0 to kind of Denza. Virton losing ground as well. They're still bottom. They're now 7 points behind Lommel, who look like they're going to be safe now after that upturn in form that they've got. And Lommel drawing 0-0, getting another point, drawing 0-0 at home against Mouscron. So although there's another round of fixtures, everyone's still to play each other once. I think it's going to be interesting to see who can secure that playoff spot now, because last week it was looking like Molenbeek, then Beveren beat Molenbeek, and it all changes, and you think, hello, it's game on again. Things have switched with one losing and one winning, and yeah, it's Molenbeek will be feeling kind of quite good about themselves, I think, at the moment, and I think Beveren have got a little bit of work and will need a little bit of luck, I think, if they're going to catch them now. But being Belgian football, as we keep saying, and it's important to underline, anything can happen.
Yeah, exactly. That goal that wasn't a goal was just ridiculous. Like, I think it's up there with the those who remember a few decades ago now, blimey, Stephen Hunt's ghost goal for Reading against Watford, which I don't know, that's still the mystery to me how that when it was even given a goal, because the ball wasn't even anywhere near the goal. But this one, like, it's so clearly on the line, and it's a fantastic save as well. Like, that's what's even more frustrating. Like, as the keeper for Liège, I'll be fuming because the save was so good, like, to keep it out. But Yeah, we saw big Will Togby score a goal for Molenbeek as well, which I thought was quite interesting to see him because obviously he was at KV Mechelen last season, the season before, but well, for both seasons, but he just never really found his feet and was loaned out to Molenbeek. And I don't think he's had that much of an impact. But I mean, that sort of a goal may be something that's quite big for them to keep pushing on. But there's still plenty of time to go in terms of that top kind of finish in the playoffs. And yeah, hopefully they'll sort out the refereeing. But even just having that thing on the watch that the refs have that tell them if the ball's gone over the line or something like that. Like you could maybe at least do that if you're not going to go all the way with VAR, because at least then you eliminate this ridiculous kind of over the line, off the line that a random linesman, if they're not up with the play, just won't see, and then they're expected to make a decision. And surely you err on the side of caution if you're in that situation where you're like, well, I'm not sure, so no goal. Rather than I'm not sure, that might be a goal, I'll just give it. Like you could tell the US players were fuming, and being it to then go on to lose the game as well in the fashion that they did in the very last few minutes would have just been so frustrating for them. Anyway, nothing they can really do about it. Maybe someone's going to lodge a complaint and do something like that. But as we've seen in most places, these things never make a difference anyway. Let's move on to look ahead to this week coming up. We have the second leg of the semi-finals of the Cup. First off, on Wednesday, we have Club Brugge at home to Ghent. They won that first leg 1-0. Ghent have done the double over them in the league, though. Scott, do you think with Club Brugge upturn form, they'll be able to see this one out? Or do you think Ghent's kind of like psychological edge over them this season may cause them to come back from this deficit?
I think this tie, obviously, with it only being 1-0, I think it's anybody's, to be honest. I don't think Ghent need to fear them because they're playing quite well. And in truth, the first leg that they lost at home, they probably shouldn't have lost that. They played quite well that night. And Club Brugge were kind of lucky to get away with the narrow win. So it'll be really interesting to see if they can kind of turn this around. I think the thing that probably in balance decide it is... Club Brugge being at home, I think, is going to work in their favour kind of slightly. But this is the more interesting of the two, I think, in terms of the way that it might pan out. And it is very much anybody's. But Ghent don't have anything to fear going into this at all, I don't think.
Yeah, it should be a good one. I don't expect it to be a 4-1 thrashing like Club Brugge inflicted on Anderlecht. I think on Antwerp, I think that will be quite a close one. We don't say Anderlecht is obviously because they are the other team involved in the other semi-final against Eupen. So despite Eupen's kind of terrible run in the league, they are very much in this tie and in the cup. They drew 2-2 in their first leg at home. If you remember rightly, this is the side last year that had an amazing cup run as well. So they are definitely a team that loves to get up for the cup. So I wouldn't put too much kind of like credence on their terrible league form because I think this is, as a one-off game, it's something that they'll be really looking forward to. Playing away from home might actually suit them as well. They've just literally got nothing to lose. They may just go for it. Whereas I think Anderlecht have all the pressure in this one. Company would probably give one of his Premier League medals to win a trophy as an Anderlecht manager. I feel like that's something that he just absolutely wants to do. I think it'd be crucial. We talk a lot about player confidence and how confidence impact players, but I think for a young manager like Company to win the cup at his boyhood club will just give him such a belief in his own ability. And I think it will definitely improve him as a manager. I can see them, if they don't score early, though, starting to get quite frustrated and panicky, thinking we need to win this game. The fans will be expecting them to win this game. I think we probably expect them to win this game, but I think it'll be close. And I think Eupen will be right in it for most of it.
Yeah, they've absolutely got nothing to lose. Of course, they went out of the competition at this stage last season, and you're right to highlight the kind of pressure on Anderlecht, I think, because, what are they? They are sort of, 90 minutes away from a cup final and potentially a trophy. And it's difficult, as you were saying, it's very difficult to understate how significant that could be for a club that obviously are so big and so famous in Belgian football culture, even in European football as well. So to get within touching distance of a trophy again of any kind is huge for that club. So how will that play out psychologically is going to be really interesting against a side like you say who we know are in a real relegation scrap at the moment and have nothing to lose. And we've seen sides before, both in Belgium and in other countries, go on to win the domestic cup, but then get relegated. So the possible scenarios here are quite interesting.
ton of Birmingham fans just kind of threw their phones away in frustration at hearing that. But I'm sure if you asked them, you wouldn't trade a cup win over staying in the league. Like, not in as a fan, I feel like winning a cup is just, you'd take that on a relegation, because the cup win will last forever. The relegation would just be like, yeah, whatever. Like, maybe we'll never get back, but at least we had that cup win. But yeah, there should be some good ties there, and should be a good final. Obviously, it will have an impact on kind of the playoffs and European places. So once we kind of know what's going on there, we can kind of get that information out to you, because yeah, as Scott said, with Belgian football, anything can happen, and anything could happen in terms of who ends up in any playoff in any situation. Anyway, I think that probably does wrap it up for this week. Quick look ahead. We have obviously Standard Beerschot as the midweek game. And then we're into March, which just seems ridiculous. But on Friday, we have St. Truden against Mechelen. Cercle Brugge against Genk. Again, another Cercle Brugge game that should be quite good against a good scoring side. Kortrijk host Union. Seraing have that kind of absolutely nothing to lose game against Club Brugge to finish off the Saturday. Antwerp and Beerschot play in the Antwerp derby. Anderlecht host Oostend. Charleroi host Standard in a Walloon derby. Ghent host Zulte Waragem. And then Eupen host Leuven to round out the Sunday. In terms of your Mola matches, if you are in the UK, Kortrijk against Union on Saturday, Antwerp and Beerschot on the Sunday, and then Charleroi versus Standard Liège. So you've got all the derbies on Derby Sunday. If you are outside the UK, you can probably watch them all on One Football, or you can also pay-per-view them on 11 Sports as well. Scott, thank you very much for joining me in this two-man show. We're hopeful that we'll have Joris back with us next week. I'm sure all the listeners have missed him ranting about referees as well. We had to kind of step up for him a little bit, but no, it'll be good to have Joris back. But yeah, as always, Scott, it's been a pleasure.
Yep, it has indeed. Great to catch up with you, Ben, and see you next week, everyone.
Yep, definitely. We'll be back again next week with another episode of the podcast. But in the meantime, if you do enjoy listening, you know what I'm going to say. Please do leave us a review wherever you do listen to your podcasts. You can also get in touch with us. We love having discourse with everyone on Twitter, social media areas. You can find us at Belgian Podcast. Alternatively, you can also email us. It's at belgianfootpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks once again for listening, everyone, and we'll see you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.